Dr. Raymont Anderson is an ordained Centers for Spiritual Living minister serving the Centers for Spiritual Living Greater Baltimore community as our spiritual director. As a lifelong learner with a passion for self-development, personal transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration, he has frequently been referred to as a Renaissance man and visionary New Thought leader who makes complex metaphysical concepts readily understandable and applicable. His mission is to live, move, and be an active member of society who serves to educate, elucidate, and emancipate people and communities to awaken and empower themselves. ACTIVE is an acronym that stands for authentic, compassionate, transparent, inspired, vibrant, and empowered. And he continues to live his bliss as a teacher, minister, author, workshop and seminar facilitator, visual artist, ASL interpreter, and ASL performing artist, mentor, father, grandfather, and more. I give you Reverend Dr. Ray.
I'm saying greetings, CSO Greater Baltimore. So today, moving in this process of living everyday wonder and relationship, today we are talking about you and me create society. Like it's this idea of how do we relate to the larger society in which we live. While we do this, recognizing that there are various nuances and intersections to what these various relationships mean, how they are formed, and how they influence not only those within a particular societal group, but how they affect the global society at large. We are invited to look at and look for ways that we can engage society to nurture and embolden healthier, more compassionate, more equitable, and more loving relationships for all. So that's a lot, right? And yet that is our goal. That is our desire and our intention. So Ernest Holmes says, people come into this life subjective to the race consciousness, the mass consciousness, and to their own environment. They unfold their own personality and begin to create new subjective thought. Now, what exactly is he saying? Well, let's dive deeper into this and look at it in a practical way. Here are three groups of children who were born into a subjective societal consciousness. Now, generally, the consciousness of the society in which you are born influences you and impacts how you show up. As it is said regarding this idea that no child is born with prejudice, hate is learned. And these messages show up in both verbal and nonverbal ways. So children pick up on the implicit biases of their parents, their teachers, their neighbors. And because hate is learned, it can be unlearned, or rather, compassion, equity, and justice can be learned, and this surrendered. Like we didn't unlearn Santa Claus. We didn't unlearn the Tooth Fairy. We surrendered that in place of a different level of consciousness, a different paradigm of belief. According to the Anti-Defamation League and various leading experts on child development, they argue that this issue of children learning hate and bias begins very early. When looking at infants and toddlers, they notice that these differences that the children pick up on, unless addressed, lead that child to develop fear, which once again, if left unchecked, will fester and become hate. This is why, when you think of Star Wars, Yoda said the path to the dark side: fear, anger, hate, right? So this idea that when the child notices the difference that they picked up from the adults in the environment and nothing challenges that, then that turns into othering, fear, phobias, hatred, etc. And so there's this process we are invited to counter all of those energies and belief systems. But how do we do that? Well, let's start with the idea in this concept of birthing into water, birthing in a bathtub. Is a baby that is born in water wet? Now, that may sound like a commonsensical question because, we know the parable or the story of the fish when asked, so how's the water? And the fish says, what is water? Well, in the same way, someone born into a system of racism, sexism, etc., will ask, what do you mean? I'm not racist. What do you mean? I'm not sexist. Because they don't currently have the understanding that, oh, I am wet. I am entrenched in and immersed in this consciousness of ageism. I didn't realize that because I'm in it. So there has to be an element of separating from it to recognize that this happens in all kinds of ways. The child born into a culture where the family rides horses, where the family paints, or the people meditate and pray, that's going to be part of their societal impact, cultural influence. So if someone asked you, how has your environment influenced you? And how does it currently influence you? Because we're in the water now. Question is, do we know it? And do we know what the water is? Breathe. Because that's the practice. Recognizing the water, recognizing the beliefs, recognizing the cultural impact and influences. Here's this young African-American woman, African-American, because that's what we would look at her and say. But we don't know, is she African-American? Because she was born and raised in Japan, and she says, I'm culturally Japanese. She was born and raised there, came to America, the United States of America, for various elements of school, and then moved back to Japan because that's her home. She's culturally Japanese. She may not be ethnically or biologically, or she's culturally Japanese. What are you culturally? What am I culturally? And not just in terms of language and ethnicity, but we know this gentleman, Steve Irwin, who raised these two amazing children. What are they culturally? Because they grew up around animals. They grew up in this. So culturally, they are just like, I love, for me, this concept is he's always been like, Dr. Doolittle. He can talk to the animals. Just imagine it, chatting with an alligator and alligatorese, right? It's that idea. They grew up speaking koala and snake and chimpanzee. Culturally, this is who they are. It's not just what they do. It's who they are. It's who they've always been and what they've always done because they were born into it. It's a culture of. Culturally, what are you? Breathe. Because where we are right now, if we're going to talk about culture and society, and we're talking about a world that works for all, then now is a time for all hands on deck. Now is a time for all of us to actively participate and engage in what it means to come together. Phil Jackson says, the strength of the team is in each individual member. The strength of each member is in the team. It's not either or, it's both and it's the intersection of, and it's the interdependence of because it's all God acting upon itself. So the team is God, and it's made up of individual incarnations of God, and all of it is the divine moving in, through, around as. So how does this interplay occur? Because we often want to talk about either or, but anyone who does any of these things, any sport, you know that it's not just you on the basketball court. You have an entire team to take into account. And if you're really playing the game, you have to be mindful of whoever is, quote unquote, your opponent. You have to know where they are. You have to intuitively be expecting where might they go. The firefighters intuitively know and feel the energy of the fire and how it may move through a space so that they can effectively do what is theirs to do. Whether you are a team who rows, everybody has to row together. Row, row, row as one. Because if we do not do that, right, you're not going to move in the, like if one person's rowing fast and one rowing slow and one's not rowing at all, we have the potential of just going around in circles or not going anywhere. I'm rowing one direction, somebody else is rowing the opposite direction. So we're actually just sitting still. It's a team effort by each individual person engaging and participating, cooperating and collaborating together. Whether it's in the ER, everybody in the ER, every doctor, surgeon, anesthesiologist, nurses, like everybody is there working together. From the paramedics, entire team, ER, entire team, everybody collectively works together. Well, that same kind of working together we've seen throughout history, whether it's the civil rights movement, the suffragist movement, the ending war and the peacetime movements, whether it's the gay liberation movement, whether it's climate, I'm not sure what word they use right now because they've changed the words, but the idea of keeping or being mindful of protecting the earth and effective climate education and awareness, and knowing that, once again, this and this do not exist in isolation, but they exist together, that one plays into all. The Black Lives Matter movement, all of this is also teamwork. This can't wait until I'm bigger, says this child. Doing these things, creating a world that works for all, can't wait. Having equity and justice can't wait. Women's rights can't wait. LGBTQ rights can't wait. There is not, well, we'll deal with that tomorrow. There is no tomorrow, there is only now. Are we willing to do what is ours to do within society now? United we stand. United we create a world that works forever, works for all, works for, it works, versus divided, us versus them, lack, scarcity, and separation. That we stay where we are. And actually, we can't stay where we are because as things continue to move, we're actually degrading, de-evolving, rather than being part of the flow. And so, just to clarify, there's this idea here, members of the clan. The world has moved, culture and society has moved into equity, justice, desegregation. And while there are still elements of racism and stuff, it moved beyond that. They're still stuck in 1812. That's what I mean by you're still here. You're still in where everything else is evolving, shifting, growing. You're still doing your best to hunker down and not shift, not grow, not change. That means that's the consciousness of divided we fall. Breathe. Because every single one of us has a part to play in this, or we wouldn't be here. Every single one of us has a call to action, or we wouldn't be here. Every single one of us has something to do, not just something to think, not just something to believe, but something to do, or we wouldn't be here. J. Krishnamurti says, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. A profoundly sick society. Landfills upon toxic waste, upon neo-Nazis, upon racism, upon white supremacy, upon mass shootings, murder, and more. That's what we are witnessing within culture and society. And if we are well adjusted to it, well, it happens every day. Well, that's them over there. It doesn't affect me. We are well adjusted. Well, what exactly are we saying? Have we accepted that? Is that what we are choosing to accept? Is that what it means to create and manifest the beloved community in a world that works for all? How sick have we as a culture and society become? And more importantly, how healed are we willing to become? And when are we willing to be it? When are we willing to do the work necessary to heal this? To have a different series of conditions and experiences. Ernest Holmes says, we cannot afford to hold personal animosities or enmities against the world or individual members of society. All such thoughts are outside the law. Love alone can beget love. So think of it this way. We cannot afford to be angry and point fingers at those who will not recycle. We cannot afford to hold personal vendettas and grudges against those who wave the Confederate flag. We don't have time to see them as the enemy. We don't have time to see them as the enemy. We don't have time to have the energy of hatred or animosity or against them. That's not doing, it has nothing to do with them. Where's that energy? It's within me. Love alone can beget love. Holding that energy within me. Now, it doesn't mean I accept what I am seeing or witnessing or experiencing, but it means I need not have the energy of anger or hatred or vengeance, or I need not have that energy as my driving force. I can have love as my driving force to eradicate the Klan. Love as my driving force to eradicate neo-Nazism. Love as my driving force to eradicate white supremacy. Love as my driving force to create systems of equity and justice. Love as the motivation, the power, the energy, rather than. Robert Hayden, poet, says, I believe it's true that one person can make a difference. But how much more difference 100 people make, or rather 99? How much more difference? Is this not why it says in the Bible, where two and more are gathered, I am in their midst. That which is the spirit of, that which is, it is there. Where more come together, where community gathers. One person can sing, cool. But the moment you add two, it's a duet, it's a trio, it's a quartet, it's a choir, it's a chorus, it's an ensemble, and it resonates. How much more difference when there are more gathered to the vision of a world that works for all. And I mean truly gathered to do the work. In 365 Science of Mind, we can no more have an individual mind than we could have an individual ownership of the principle of mathematics or of harmony or of beauty. Renuka, you can't add that for the fundraising because addition is mine. Multiplication is mine. Those are mine. You can't use them. You can't have them. 2 + 2 = 4 is mine. No, you can't have it, Tracy. 6 take away. That subtraction is mine. Division is mine. They're mine. No one can go to the museum and say any paintings are beautiful because beauty is mine. I own beauty. Right? Sounds rather silly. Well, to say there is an individual mind that is somehow separate from, there is only one mind, and that mind is God. And therefore, that mind that I am using is the one mind, and the mind that you use is the one mind. Now, the expression of it, individual, just like my expression of how I do math, when you do math, calculator or longhand, when I see beauty and you see beauty, harmony, joy, we experience it individually, but understand that there is only one. And so if one of us experiences it, then God is experiencing it, then the oneness is experiencing it. But our call is to ensure that more individuals are also capable of experiencing it. A couple of weeks ago, Tom made a comment. I don't even remember what venue we were in, but he talked about and made the comparison of each individual raindrop collecting together. And it is those individual raindrops that create the overflow in the cup. The individual raindrops, or if it's a coffee pot, the individual drips that fill the pot to overflow. The individual drips, the individual snowflakes that fall that create the winter wonderland. We are those individual droplets of water, and yet each individual drop, each individual one is still H2O. It's not like this is H2O, this is pudding, this is H2O. I don't even know what that is. All of them are water. Each individual expression, it's all God, all of us, every single one of us, the divine. Which means we are part of the creative process. We are the expression of the divine. John Lennon said, if everyone, keyword, demanded peace instead of yet another television set, there would be peace. If we demanded equity, if we demanded a world that worked for all, rather than another smartphone, another app, another this, another that, if we demanded it and we were doing the work, then we would have it right now. But we haven't demanded it yet. John Lennon also goes on to say, peace is not something you wish for. It's something you make, something you do, something you are, and something you give away. Love is not something you wish for. It's something you make. Maybe that's why we say make love. It's something you do. It's something you are, and it's something you give away. God is not something you wish for. God is something you enact, you embody. God is something you do. God is something you are. God is something you give away. That your words are you giving God to whoever is listening, to the universe. You are giving it. Those words are prayers, affirmations, declarations. It's God in vibration, and you are giving it away. Why? Like, what's the intent? To change the world, to heal the world, to love. Buckminster Fuller says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. We did that with Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, like I mentioned earlier. We didn't fight against them. Be gone, Santa Claus. Be gone, Tooth Fairy. We didn't fight against them. We built a new model, a new consciousness, a new belief system that made the old, whatever that is regarding them, it's obsolete. Like, I have no reason to believe in this, guy coming down the chimney eating all my cookies. I mean, because if he did, I'd have to buzz him, because those are my cookies. But we made that the childhood version of it, we made it obsolete. We still know that there Santa Claus exists in cartoons and movies and whatnot, but Santa Claus as what we one time believed. Oh, Santa Claus, it's Christmas time. It's Christmas time in the city. Ooh. We made that obsolete. When are we going to make racism obsolete? To change racism, build a new model that makes the existing model of racism obsolete. Make the existing model of sexism obsolete. To change poverty, economic injustice, homophobia, political corruption, gun violence. Build a new model that makes the existing model of each of these and all of these systems of consciousness obsolete. That's what we are called to do. Breathe. This week's practice, journaling, conversation, meditation, whatever it is you do with this. Number one, what does a world that works for all, what does that even mean? Are we looking for ways to support a society where dictators of the world have what works for them, and those they reign over have a world that works for them? Is that what we're talking about? What does it mean to create? What does it mean to you to create or live in a world that works for all? What is a utopia? Is that what we're talking about? What are the characteristics of a utopian society? But is that what we're talking about? Number two, what is the role of spirituality in governing how society operates? What's the difference between being a Christian nation governed by the Bible and being a non-religious, spiritually governed global society, or a free and open global society? Like, for example, we talk about spirituality being one thing, and then we talk about politics and education and the legal system as somehow separate. But if God is all there is, then the people who are making laws are God incarnating itself, whether they know it or not. So God is in all of these things. God is in the school. God is the school. The books, the kids, the chairs, the pencils, it's all God. Well, what about the curriculum? Well, what about the policies and procedures? What happens when we mesh this and recognize God is in, spirit is in, the universe is in all of it? How do we do that consciously so that we are, once again, in alignment with a world that works for all? But what does that mean, a world that works for all? Right, exactly. And then number three, have a conversation with two people, dos personas, about what are some of the challenges that you currently face, currently have, currently experience with society. For example, I see bullying or cancel culture as a major challenge in our society. Well, what about it as a challenge? What is the personal challenge for you? Do you feel personally attacked when you hear about someone being bullied or canceled? Do you see bullying and cancel culture as somehow being synonymous? What is required spiritually and societally to heal? And what are the steps that you are invited to take to heal bullying in all of the ways that it shows up? Schools, colleges, social media, places of employment, the dining room table at family functions, wherever it shows up. What are you called to do? What are you called to embody? What are you called to heal? Breathe. This week's declaration and affirmation, I will say it first, and if you feel in alignment with it, then say it with me on the second go round. I am a powerful catalyst of love within society. Together. I am a powerful catalyst of love within society. Breathe, recognizing that this is the truth of our being.